Welcome to the special e-seminar presented by the MIT Bootcamps Alumni Association. Today's topic is about how to deal with your post-bootcamp journey. With me today are the alums from Class 1, Class 3, and 4. And from the Global Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, my name is Andrew Nui. I am a part of the MIT Bootcamps team and also an alum of the first bootcamp 3.5 years ago. That's a really long time. Thank you for being here. And I'll hand it over to my co-host Rachel, who will be introducing our alums. Take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to all the incoming boot campers, and we hope to give you some insights into what happens after boot camp and how you take your experience into your lives after that. So thank you, Andrew, for introducing the e-seminar. So just if you have any questions, please feel free to post them into the chat box, which you can access by clicking on the chat icon, which is at the bottom of the window. Just type in whatever questions you have, and if we are able to get to them during the session, we'll answer those, and if not, we promise that we'll attend to them in the Facebook chat and you'll get your answers. So just a very, very quick overview. Each of our wonderful panelists who are here this evening are going to introduce themselves briefly, and they'll tell you which class they're from, where they live, what they're currently doing, and what their greatest passions are in life. And then we'll look at a few topics that I posted into the Facebook groups today, and we'll be creating a summary like last time so that you can access all the key points that were covered. And then we'll see if we have any time left at the end. We'll be addressing your questions, and then we'll just take it from there. So now I will let Anders start with his presentation, his self-intro. Over to you, Anders.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rachel. Well, my name is Anders Røbke. I'm based in Copenhagen in Denmark, and I was part of class 4. It seems like many years ago because so much is going on. So the short story here is that I'm working within the field of AI and renewable energy. Besides that, I'm a full-time family father, and we just in my company did the product market fit, and now we are scaling the business like hell, and also fundraising. So I'm quite busy, but it's a fun journey. That's more or less my introduction.
Thanks very much, Anders. And now it's over to Andres for his intro. And don't forget to unmute yourselves.
Okay. Hi, hello. My name is Andres. I was part of the first cohort. I was in the first bootcamp back in 2014. I majored in business administration. I have been a journalist for almost 10 years. And since then, I have been moving backwards, and now I'm all the way back into how to connect information, on the most basic scale, which is basically related to physics and all that kind of stuff, but has allowed me to connect many different fields. I'm now a member of several global communities, and basically what I'm trying to do is looking for ways to connect them.
Thank you very much, Andres. And now it's over to Charlotte. And I'm just going to say very quickly that it's past 1 a.m. where Charlotte is at the moment. So we very much appreciate her presence here with us. Over to you, Charlotte.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So my name is Charlotte, and I'm currently in Nairobi, where it is 1 a.m. Feels like the party life with you guys. I'm originally from Belgium, but I run a social enterprise here. So I'm in the field, and that's also where my passion lies, of education and capacity building for youth. So looking at how is it that you can get people to have a more holistic, creative, and customized education that enables them to succeed in their life, whether it comes work or personal life, and combine that for success. So currently, I've been running my social enterprise for the last 2 years here in Nairobi, and it's been just mainly capacity building, but now we're looking into the field of how to combine technology, AI for that purpose of holistic and creative capacity building for youth. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And now it's over to Dorian from London.
Hi guys, I'm Dorian, I'm from class 3. Right now I'm pursuing a PhD in AI, but I'm also very heavily invested in blockchain and technology in general. And I've recently also started doing some VC funding, especially in the blockchain scene. So if anything blockchain related, I'm the guy.
Thank you very much, Dorian. And now it's over to Ray Rosales.
Hello, my name is Ray Rosales. I'm in Canada at the moment. I'm actually, originally from the Philippines, but I spent many, many years in the States. I did my master's and PhD there, and I was also a journalism professor there for more than a decade. And then I moved to Canada as a higher education administrator. I got done with it. I'm now on sabbatical for 1 year. So I've been transitioning. Bill's class, Entrepreneurship 101, was actually kind of the light bulb moment for me that I need to be doing this. I need to be evangelizing entrepreneurship. That's what I've been doing. So the 2016 Bootcamp, class 4, opened a lot of doors and opportunities for me in terms of spreading the word, spreading the gospel.
Hallelujah.
Great, thank you, Ray. A very quick intro from me. I am situated in Rome, Italy. I am a bootcamper from class 3, and I attended the bootcamp in Seoul, South Korea, together with Dorian. And my passion that was defined through the bootcamp is in sharing knowledge and connections through technology. So this is my area of passion, and that's what I'm trying to develop in different ways. So at the moment, I'm engaging in alumni communications research and how to create better tools for us to all keep connected. And I am also engaged in the local ULab community here in Italy, which is spawned from another MIT online course. And I'm also developing projects to bring entrepreneurship into schools, to high school students. So this is, and I'm also a motorcyclist in my free time, so I love to dirt bike, and that's how I spend my Saturdays. So that's it for intros, and now we're going to move on to our themes. So we're going to ask Anders, the first topic we want to address is what is your mission, Anders, and how did Bootcamp help to shape it or change it from where you were before you started and after you left Bootcamp? What happened on your journey?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm an industry professional from the renewable industry, working with wind turbines, and I've done that for many years. So actually my mission is to make renewable electricity as cost effective as you can, so it can compete against coal-fired power plants and so forth. So that's my kind of passion and mission in this. And then in 16, I attended the bootcamp because I had this feeling of doing something else instead of being part of a corporate business. And actually, I would say that the bootcamp made me more believe in that I actually could set out and have an impact on an industry through my company, Wind Power Lab, which I started after the bootcamp. I'm not saying that you should leave your corporate positions or anything just because you've been part of the bootcamp, but at least for me, I used it as kind of a rocket fuel for me to set out and do this on my own. And yeah, I have no regrets so far. It has been by far the most challenging thing I've ever done because the learning curve here is just so steep. And you know, 1 month in my company feels like, I don't know, 2 years of experience in an ordinary position somewhere in a corporate job, in my view at least. So I would say that the bootcamp helped me shape the direction at least I took, and also gave me a good start because I really got a structure to follow when I started out in my company.
Thank you, Anders. Just a quick question. So is that to say that you arrived at bootcamp with already a sort of plan of what you would be doing afterwards, and the bootcamp was like a launch pad, and you knew what you needed to acquire to be strong enough to take that step?
Well, I for sure arrived with a lot of ideas on what to work on, and then after the bootcamp, I had the methodology to apply directly to one of my specific concepts or ideas. And I actually started the day one with the 24 steps, and yeah, just got going. And I actually used the 24 steps for onboarding my team, and now today we are 8 people and counting, and they all go through the steps so they know what the company is all about and what we are trying to solve, who the customers are, and I'm really happy to provide them with that 360 view of the startup idea they are working on.
Thanks very much, Anders. That's wonderful. I think that's really interesting for the upcoming cohort to learn about, because your perspective is quite unique. I think probably you're one of the few who have actually gone through this kind of a process, and we've all been really excited to see how Anders has been going through these steps. And then later on, I'll be sharing with you a link, because Sally Coldrick and I actually documented his not day by day, but month by month progress. And Anders, if you're willing, we can share that to the community. So,
yeah, please do that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Anders. So now I'm going to ask Andres, in what way has Bootcamp impacted your mission, directly or indirectly? So what happened between the before and the after, and how has that affected the way you approach your projects?
Well, basically, the most dramatic change of the bootcamp was receiving the letter before the bootcamp. Receiving that letter and seeing that the mission of MIT is solving the world's greatest challenges, it's very empowering. For me, it was like believing that I can be part of solutions to world's greatest challenge with science and technology. The challenge I had before the bootcamp, the same challenge I have now, but now I have the challenge on a global scale, which is basically connecting information from different sources, different kinds of information. But after the bootcamp, I realized that there are people whom I can work with, and I can find solutions in that global scale. So basically, the bootcamp allowed me to not necessarily change that mission, but make that mission a mission on a global scale, and realize that if you think on a systems perspective, you can allow people to be part of that mission as well. So that's why I'm right now trying to solve challenges and helping people solve challenges on global scales.
Thank you, Andres. So would you say that the bootcamp has made you think big in many ways, and thus also empower your capacity to inspire others?
Totally. It allowed me to think big, to believe in myself as well, because basically the biggest accomplishment I had before applying to the bootcamp was realizing that I have a challenge that motivate me enough to look for information of many different fields and trying to connect it. That was my biggest accomplishment, and that is my biggest accomplishment so far. So in that sense, I can say that the bootcamp allowed me to think big, and not just that, allowed me to think big and find people who also thinks big and are willing to work with others.
Thank you, Andres. That's really inspiring. So the shift can be external, as in Andres's case, and in Andres's, all these Andres and Andres, the shift can be inside, and I think what happens inside and outside mirror each other. So it's a question of which happens first, but I think it's interesting to have the contrast between these two perspectives. And now I'm going to ask Charlotte, how has Bootcamp shaped or changed your mission? Is your mission very different from what it was before, and how has Bootcamp shaped that?
Great. So I think in terms of my mission, so which is around, my passion is around education and the customer education, holistic education. I think I've had that for a very long time. I think since a kid, I kind of knew this is where I want to be working in. This is my passion. But I think for me, the big difference, and I related a lot to what Andres was saying, because I think there's two sides, which is one, the bootcamp brought this kind of belief in my capacity. I already had a company when I was in the bootcamp. My company was about 6 months old, and it was still tiny. Well, it's still in progress, but it was very small, still in testing phase. And for a long time I thought I want to do all these things, but who am I to think, this kind of imposter syndrome, who am I to think that I have the capacity to be able to do that? Who am I to think that I have the skills, the knowledge, the ability to go and change education around the world, let alone in Kenya? And I think when I got selected and I went there, and people were starting to asking me questions at a level that I was like, wow, I actually am sitting here and I'm being asked questions that make people, people talk to me in a way where I actually have credibility. I'm much more than what I think I am. And I think that builds a lot my understanding that I am able to do this. And you also meet people around you you always think the people that are successful, they seem so far away. And then you meet people around you that have done such inspirational things, and they're sitting right next to you. And you're like, wow, I'm being selected in the same bootcamp as this person has. This is amazing. This means that I have possibilities. So I think that was the first thing, the belief in the capacity that I have inside of me, and then the belief in the possibilities. I think for me, my dream is to really use AI to build those customized and really make education in a way that fits every individual and not a system like it is right now. And I was always like, this is also so far away. What are the systems? What is there? It seems very blurry of what is it that can be used. And then suddenly you're in a room with people that are experts in AI, that are experts in things that you don't even comprehend, because I don't have a background in that. But they suddenly make you understand that it's possible, that you can use that. And it's not something that you need to have millions of funding for it. You can actually start it off from wherever you are. And so I think that was the second part, like the belief in the possibility. So it kind of brought it didn't shift my mission, but it really emphasized the possibility of that mission happening. Not in another 10 years, 15, but actually now I can start that right now. So yeah, that's what it did for me.
Thanks, Charlotte. That's so interesting, because I'm also wondering how many people actually feel imposter syndrome, because when you mentioned that, I remembered I had it too, and I think probably more people than we imagine do have it. And it's so validating to be in the midst of people who have such talent. And I keep being amazed every time I speak to a bootcamper, and there's always something incredible in each person that I met, either there or via chat later on. And I think it's wonderful to know also that other people did feel like imposters, and probably many did. And so this is encouraging. And I think that's where the power of the community actually lies, is being together and feeling this power and feeling validated by the presence of others, and thinking, well, yes, if I'm here too, then I'm probably more capable and more skilled than I thought. And I think the diversity too is amazing, and it's so enriching to be speaking with people who are from so many different industries, and everyone becomes a piece of the puzzle that we can build together. So that's thank you for sharing this insight with us, Charlotte. Now I'm going to ask Dorian. Dorian, how did Bootcamp shape or impact or change your journey in entrepreneurship? Like what has it done to you? If there were to be a picture before and after, how would you describe the evolution?
So it didn't change my main mission. So my mission, I'm very fond of innovation and innovation through technology, because right now it's very effective. I do believe that through innovation we can actually provide change and improve our society. And yeah, I am a firm believer in that. And what the bootcamp did is provide me with new tools and a totally different way of going about the world in general. In particular, the difference between the small medium enterprise mentality I had before and how to look about innovation-driven entrepreneurship way. Case in point, my background, I used to do. I have background in running small businesses, but are totally different when you apply this mentality in innovation-driven entrepreneurship. And one thing in particular that really shaped my life further on was the shift of looking for the idea to actually looking for the problem. This is probably the most valuable lesson I got from the bootcamp, which I immediately applied afterwards. One of the fields I was even at that point in time invested in was blockchain and blockchain investments, and I completely changed my way of looking at projects, and I did some major changes. And yeah, for this I'm very, very grateful for attending the bootcamp. And besides that, what I got as bonus is this amazing community that I can always turn to, and I can have advice from people that are have areas of expertise in domains totally different from mine. And since we have this common framework, we can discuss a similar language. Even though some of our from different cultures, different backgrounds, this framework allows us to relay information from different areas in a manner that for me is easy to understand.
Thanks, Dorian. Would you say that the bootcamp experience changed your attitude towards networking?
Yeah, yes, because there you're in the situation where you have people from all over the world. You don't know their habits, the customs, and you have to change your attitude quite fast. Actually, me personally, I definitely had to lower down my ego and my guard, and to be more open and receptive, because it's a totally different environment. And yeah, if I wouldn't have done that, I would have missed out. And if you ask me, this is what you should do there. First thing, leave the ego at the door. Be open to different types of interaction, because we're gonna have people that have been raised in different ways, so we're exposed to different things. And yeah, be receptive and try to be as empathic as possible, and try to connect, because you'll have a lot to learn and definitely help.
Yeah, just a quick anecdote. I never really was conscious. I wasn't very conscious of the power of networking, and I think bootcamp taught me that. So just to illustrate, my LinkedIn profile used to be maybe 50 connections, and after bootcamp, within a few months, it grew to over 1,000. So it was, I mean, it was funny for me, because I started networking like crazy, and I wanted to stay connected with everybody, and so it just completely changed my LinkedIn profile, and I started also to look after it more and feed things into it. So yeah, that's just one example. But I think the human connection is one of the most amazing takeaways from bootcamp. And now it's over to Ray. I'm going to ask Ray, how has bootcamp impacted your trajectory as a professional?
It opened, the bootcamp experience opened a lot of opportunities for me. But first, I was actually, that experience, a month after, I was still feeling overwhelmed by it all. It was just really drinking from the from the fire hose of ideas. There was just so much. There was so many mind-blowing sessions that it took me a while to to really figure out what I wanted to do. But once I get started in terms of networking locally, I was able to hold workshops, develop a class on entrepreneurship. Now, so part of my thinking and my mission is really to embed the idea of entrepreneurship in curriculum, especially in curriculum outside of business. So that's what I've been doing for the past year or so, communicating with other programs and other departments, and even doing some community work or holding workshops, because my very own idea is really using this experience to help people create jobs. So that's kind of my mission at the moment.
Right, Ray, thank you. And you've also done the teacher training, right? So has the connection with the teaching community actually empowered you in new ways?
Yes, and also, you know, MIT is quite a renowned brand. So once you brand that thing, oh, I've attended this boot camp, they listen, they pay attention, and they start working with you. So it opened a lot of, you know, there's a lot of cachet with the boot camps. It opened a lot of opportunities for me in terms of working with some big universities in Canada, and as well as with the local community. And so I actually not just I was feeling overwhelmed, but at the same time I felt really small attending the boot camp, because I, as a 45-year-old man, I met a 19-year-old, well, two 19-year-olds with patents already. So I felt like the least smart in that session, in that class.
So that was like very big imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yes, that was an amazing class 4 with just superstars, rock stars. That was quite daunting, actually. I can relate to that. Thank you, Ray, for your insights. Now we're going to move on to topic 2 and ask Anders, like, if you were to single out 2 of your biggest learnings from the bootcamp, which would they be? They could be, you know, tangible or just psychological.
Yeah, sure. Well, I have 2 very big learnings I would like to share. The first one being structure. I'm very fond of you know, the methodology we were taught, and I must just stress that you can't prepare enough for your entrepreneurial journey and what will hit you eventually. So if you get a structure in place when you start solving your problem or your project, then you have a fairly improved chance of success, because you will get you know, the 360 viewpoints on whatever you're working on, and taking care of whatever comes up or comes to your mind, instead of being surprised. And when something hit you by surprise, then you're more prepared, because you are so much into the details regarding your project, and that will just be the differentiator when running for funding, just getting success in your startup. So establishing all these support points for your decisions, and get rid of all the risk in just basing decisions on luck and what you think, but investigate and pay attention to the detail. That is what you get out of the structure. That was one of my biggest learnings. The other one would be your team. You cannot succeed if you are your own one-man army. So address how you function in a team, your weaknesses, your strengths, and you know, my big learning in that one would be maybe you know, it's okay to talk about your own limitations, and get people in your team that can support you in where you're weak in your own skill set, and be humble about that, because it's your team that will be the other key thing in terms of your success rate here. So that's my 2 biggest learnings, to really address the team and to get the structure in place.
Yes, because entrepreneurship is such a long and complex journey, isn't it? So having the 24 steps as a framework is like having anchor points that you can you can return to, and then you reiterate, and then you go through them again. So you never get lost in the sea of things to do, and that becomes like an anchor point, right?
Yeah, and on top of that, then you are more prepared for all the things you will experience that will hit you eventually, that you couldn't dream of, because you have really done your homework.
Indeed, yes. Andres, do you have anything to add to that, or any other insights? What were your learnings? Because I think probably those two aspects are one of them, are the main two for me as well. Just the framework, the actually tool set that you come away with from bootcamp, and the human support system that you get connected to. But perhaps you have also additional insights.
Well, one thing I would add is that take into account the full name of the 24 steps. It's disciplined entrepreneurship. And we usually forget the word discipline. One of the things I learned the most from the bootcamp is that if you are not disciplined, if you don't stay focused and trying to solve a challenge, you will not solve it. During the bootcamp, we had a great team. We were a great team. I was talking to Rachel a week ago, and I told her that during the bootcamp, we had a crazy idea, and we think that we sort of created Pokemon Go like 2 or 3 years before Pokemon Go was created. And we had the team for creating that. We had people from Disney, from Lucasfilms. We had Maggie in the team. So we were the team. We had the idea. We had everything, but we didn't stick with the idea. So you may have the team, you may have the idea, you may have the challenge, you may have the solution. But if you don't work with that, if you are not disciplined, you will not do anything. So that's one of the biggest things I learned from that experience of the bootcamp. Now I still have the team, I have the connections. I usually talk with them, but from that experience, we learned a lot. Johnny, for instance, is working with augmented reality and education, and we had these things that we learned. But one of the things I learned the most is that if you're passionate about an idea and about a solution, you have to be disciplined and you have to work on it. It's not enough to have a team. It's not enough to have an idea. You have to be passionate about the challenge and looking for ways for a solution.
If I may add to that, to Andres, what Andres had said, really, it's not just enough to have a team. It's not just enough to have an idea, but really, or the problem that you want to solve, but it's the discipline in persisting, either persevering or pivoting, depending on what happens based on your validation of your research and the direction that you and your team members want to go. At the bootcamps team now for the last over 2 years now, we literally eat that same dog food and we iterate. Stuff happens, failures happen, challenging situations come up, and we take them one step at a time and we iterate. We say, okay, well, something needs to happen. This is not working. Now what do we do? And really, the discipline approach, so discipline really is freedom. And with Jocko Willing coming to the bootcamp in Brisbane, he will be a coach on the team and leadership front. And that's going to be significant for the Brisbane bootcamp and also for the people participating. So yeah, I think looking back, and you would agree with me, Andres was in my class. I would say we're pretty much more disciplined. We set schedules, we have alarms, we do everything and anything to get ourselves into some shape routine of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so anything we can do to create that narrow, the ability to narrow our focus and concentrate and pay such close attention to the stuff that we need to do, I think that's going to be significant for you guys as well.
And one more thing,
yeah, go ahead.
Is that it's a paradox, because you have to be focused, but also you have to be open to realize what an emergent strategy might be. So it's a paradox. You have to be open and be focused at the same time.
Right, absolutely. Let me answer just 2 questions really quickly. Romero asked, will Jocko be at the bootcamp for 1 day? He's going to be there the entire session. So along with the other coaches, he's going to be speaking as well as coaching in the team and leadership side of things. And then, you know, Rachel, I'm kind of interrupting a little bit, but a question from Israel, a question to the panel is, what would you do again, and what wouldn't you do if you were leaving for the bootcamp today? What would be your plans? I'm going to let you guys answer.
This question is up for grabs. What would you do differently, Charlotte?
I think maybe we'll talk about this a bit later, but I think what I would do differently is having a plan for when I come back. Like for me, the hardest part I think was all these things happened at the bootcamp, and then I left, I had a company, I came back, company was still running, employees were still there, co-founder is still there, and you've just gone through a completely life-changing experience, and you come back and they're just like, Charlotte, you've been gone for 2 weeks, we got you to get back on track, and you're just like, wait, I have so many things that we need to work on. It's just like, no. Like right now you have 2 weeks of work left to do. And I think actually really planning for how is it that you incorporate that new knowledge, and how do you inspire the people that were not there but that really need to also get that knowledge and get that inspiration that you had. How do you involve them once you come back? And I also think I made this mistake of going back home straight after, and I think I should have taken a few days off to digest and rest, because I was exhausted, and I came back and I didn't rest, and people were on my toes of like, you have to do this, entrepreneurship toes. And I got really, really tired after it. And so I think it's super important. If I would change anything, it's really giving myself the time to digest information and think about how do I bring this back to the people that were not there, but I need to know about it so that the change can be implemented in the best way possible. Yeah, I lived that the hard way, definitely.
I have a quick answer. Coming back, I wish I would have shared slowly with my organization, because sometimes we have this wet dog syndrome, and like you have new ideas, you're like a wet dog, and then people are like, "Ooh, what are you smoking or something?" So yeah, share slowly, and you can embed your new ideas with your organization slowly.
It's true. It's true what you say, Charlotte and Ray, but it's something to be considered carefully, and that you only know with hindsight. So if you're able to plan how you're going to share this information, because it's very true, when you come back from boot camp, it's almost like you're speaking a different language, and you realize that only other boot campers can actually understand you. And I had the same problem with my team. I was trying to force a lot of new ideas on them, and they weren't ready for it. So maybe you need to look for ways to convey some information little by little, maybe the key points, and do it gently, because otherwise it creates a lot of friction, and it makes you feel alien, and it makes the team it makes your team feel alien and kind of not being able to keep up, and it's really like speaking a different language and not being able to communicate anymore. So that deserves some thought as to how you're going to process. And so I think Charlotte's suggestion to take a little bit of gap time is very valuable, because if you just plunge back into your daily life and whatever you were working on before, it's very difficult for you to absorb this evolution and turn it into something that doesn't become frustration. So otherwise it becomes exasperating for everybody, and it's not the best way to process what you've learned. So I think, yeah, taking some time off is a good, of course, if that's possible. So
I have there's another suggestion linked to that, which is like when you've just finished, if you do manage to take some time off, or even if you don't, and you're part of already the alumni community, there's so many alumni that are there already. Like you might find maybe one of you that finishes a boot camp is in the same situation as I am. You already have a startup, you go to the boot camp, you come back, you have a co-founder, a team that's there waiting for you. And like if you get in touch with an alumni that speaks the same language, but that already went through that situation, it can actually help you and be like, okay, let me guide you through how to integrate this into your life. And you have people, because loads of us have different profiles. Some of us already had a company, continue having the same company. Some of us were in corporate life and then quit their job. Some of us were in corporate life, stayed in corporate life. And you'll be able to, there definitely is going to be an alumni for your situation. And so it might be worth to try and get in touch with an alumni of your situation that can help you through how to integrate that, because it can be hard to do it by yourself when you don't know. You're just in that, wow, what am I doing?
Yeah, so a good way is also to reconnect with people from your cohort, or even you'll probably discover once you've been through the boot camp, the alumni community is like a great big family. So even if you haven't been in the same class as someone else, you'll see that you connect very easily, because there is exactly this common language we were talking about. And so we've all been through the same crucible, which is this week of heaven and hell, and reconnecting sometimes even remotely with someone on the other side of the world when you're feeling misunderstood by everybody else. It could be your family, it could be your colleagues, is something very powerful. And I would recommend that you remember you have this community that you can always turn to. Of course, you'll have some people that you connect with better, but it's amazing how this feeling of being akin to one another is very, very strong. And I think that's one of the greatest joys of the bootcamp, is going home with this treasure of people that you can relate to. So chatting, about whatever's not working and feeling the support of your community is really priceless. Andrew, was there another part of the question that you put out that we haven't covered?
No, but also to add to that, Andres is working on a peer mentoring system that we'll be testing in the next little while in the bootcamp. And I think one of the things that's probably vitally important is for the people who have gone before, how do you navigate your situations? Not just the professional situations, but also your personal situations. Some of us have families, some of us have partners. How does that work? Because, how do you communicate to your kids? How do you communicate to your partners? How do you communicate to your family? Because literally they have no contextual relevance for what this thing or this program you've intended is. It's just completely foreign to them. And they're staring at you and going, what are you talking about? Like, how is that even possible? Why are you staying up so late? Who are you talking to in the middle of the night? Why is your phone buzzing nonstop? And you can see everybody is laughing their head off, because that's the reality. It's just this disconnect, right? Like, it is a disconnect. And where, the alumni component of this is to now look at how can we help, not just ourselves, but also future cohorts reconnect in low barrier ways that are helpful, that are beneficial, not just for ourselves, but really, we are connected to this global community, but now how do you build and grow and provide the same level of support in your local community? And that's going to be significant. So watch out in the coming days. We definitely have plans to roll that out to the wider community as well. So I think there were also some other questions about, partnering on businesses with other boot campers. That was Javier. Why yes, why no? I'm sure, Rachel, you can speak to that a little bit. Let's see. Jonathan Dalton also said, My wife is supportive but terrified of what could happen after boot camp. My workmates are skeptical. Maybe this is the Burning Man of entrepreneurship and innovation. So I'm going to stop talking.
My family is still struggling to understand what I did and what I'm doing. So that includes my parents, my husband, my children, and I try to share with them, but it's difficult because there's so much, and they can only kind of see parts of it. And as Andrew, you were saying, you come home and you've been impacted. So you're actually a changed person, which requires it requires you to adapt, and also the people around you. So it does become like a journey in itself, just managing that. So what I was going to move on to now is to say that sometimes after boot camp, you'll find yourselves still wanting to work with your team, and then you'll realize that you're all in different countries and different time zones. So that is another topic that could be discussed at length. But I was going to ask our panelists this evening, like who is actually still working on a team, whether it be the bootcamp project or something else, where you have people cross country in different time zones, and how do you if you do have a team with people who are on the other side of the world, how do you work around time zones? How do you keep the passion alive between people who are not meeting face to face to build things together? So who's in that situation here?
I am, for sure. I'm based in Copenhagen. We have 2 offices in Denmark, and then we have one in Boston as well, our office, but we have 1 employee at least, and then we have 1 in Kuala Lumpur. So that's quite challenging. So what we did was actually to meet up in person and create all the social bonds, and then we keep those intact by using a lot of video. And then you have some golden hours during your days, a work day, where you prioritize to have your conference calls by using video. That's how we do it. And then of course we have Slack and Trello boards and all that to keep the information and communication flowing at all times. But it's a tough one. But instead of being kind of a barrier for your teamwork, you can use it as an opportunity. So for instance, with the guy I have in Boston, compared to what we're doing in Copenhagen, so we start out by doing some work, then we have 2 hours in the afternoon together, and then he will continue for 6 hours more. That means we have maybe a 16-hour workday as a team. So you can use it in that way instead of struggling with the time zones.
So it takes awareness and planning. So right.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, the opportunity becomes an obstacle.
Yeah, and you need to trust each other, because you need to know what the other guys are thinking, even though they're not in the same room. So.
Thanks, Anders. Dorian, do you have any kind of time zone issues with the way you're working, and do you have colleagues that are across different borders?
Yeah, not a lot to add on this front. We make sacrifices by turn, so it's only fair to take turns in arranging proper hours for the customer daily situation. It's all about the team coordination and coming to a mutual understanding. So yeah.
Thanks, Dorian. And Ray, do you have any issues with time zones and distance and connecting via remote to keep a project alive and kicking?
Not in particular. Mine it's more of I learned a lot about cultural differences. Yeah, Western folks tend to be straightforward. Now, if you live in Asia, there's a different approach that you have to do. Yeah, if you don't receive emails or responses for days at a time, meaning they're not liking your work, or there's got to be a reason behind there. So there's subtle cultural differences that I have to work with.
Right. So would you say that the bootcamp Did the bootcamp prepare you for that with all the different cultures coming together? Did it give you a taste of how to handle cultural differences? Did it make you more aware?
Yes, and to appreciate diversity. And at the same time, one of the things I learned from the bootcamp is really embracing the clash of ideas and finding your way through kind of the mess and trying to resolve differences.
Thank you. Yes, that's anyone else with cultural differences within their team at the moment that they have to.
Huge. Yeah, I work with a team, like my whole team is Kenyan, and I think that's been it's been a very interesting experience, because in the beginning you think it's okay, it's not going to be that different, like we'll find a way, until you realize that there's so many small things that make a huge impact on the way that you want to manage, on the way that you want to lead them, inspire them, motivate them. And I realized that the best way of dealing with it is actually, one, being open and really not telling yourself, I know how to deal with this, just telling yourself, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out when it happens. And then really immersing yourself. For me, like, I think I have a team of 25 now, and we're 2 internationals and 22 local people. And I think it was really immersing myself into, okay, how do they live their life? Where do they come from? What are and really observing, even from people that work in other companies, how do their bosses treat them? How, all these things to start seeing how it is. But also, on the other hand, it's not changing your values. And based on that, I know that in our company, a lot of people say they really want to work for us because it's a very new culture that people are not used to. But so we managed to kind of mix, what do they need in terms of their cultural need, like that the cultural differences, what do we need to respect, but also how do we bring we're lucky to have a difference. So how do we capitalize on that difference instead of seeing it as, no, now we need to work the way they do because that's the way they do it. Yeah.
So are there any particular habits or communication issues? Do you have an anecdote that you could share to illustrate this?
Yeah, I don't know if this is okay. The way that in Kenya, the way that education and the way that parenting is done, and even in companies, there's a lot of authority. It's very authoritarian, and people are used to being beaten, for example, a lot, and there's a lot of negative psychology. It's a thing. Kids will laugh about it. They'll be like, if you haven't been beaten by your mother, it's like she's not a good mother. So it's very scary for me. I'm like, what? That's something that happens. But so their whole life they're really being conditioned using a lot of fear and using a lot of negative reinforcement of things. And so when we came in, and I'm used to having a very positive, let's talk about it, asking questions, very positive psychology and happy, fluffy more. And actually for some people it doesn't work, because when your whole life you've been treated a certain way to grow and change, when you come in and you go lightly, you're not going to change. You're not going to take it seriously when somebody says you're not doing your job. How do you, like, let's talk about it. What are the challenges you're facing? As long as they don't get that like strong a strong sit down of, if you don't do this you're fired, for example, or like a kind of fear, they just see it as, this is nothing, I can get away with it. And I think that's been one of the biggest like things that I've had to face. Like, okay, I can't use this whole like, I can't always use the whole positive psychology of, yes, let's learn together and let's grow. Sometimes there has to be, you really have to put your foot down. If not, you're not being respected. Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing that you share this with us, because I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, and I think you really need to adapt your outlook and your behavior to the circumstance, right? Because as you're saying, if you use your standards, then you probably won't even be getting your messages across in the way that you would like them to be received.
If I may add to that, really, I think, sorry to interrupt, Charlotte, but the cultural piece is huge. And, you know, you're coming to the boot camp, you're getting this almost booster shot of culture, of boot camp culture, and then you're coming back and then you're expecting everybody else to understand that same culture, and it just doesn't work. And add to that the culture of the local situations, and of course also your own background. So I think one of the other things that, at least for me, I kind of struggle with when working in teams is to, I strive really hard to make people understand and to try to be understood. And culturally, from the Asian perspective, it's always, like Charlotte has said, the negative reinforcement. And that is a challenge for both to be communicating that or not trying to default to that, as well as to not kind of interpret silence as, oh, they don't like me, or they don't, I did something wrong, I didn't say something right, whatever that might be. So I think it's both ways. Like, the culture is not just a piece of paper, but really it's lived out in the work that you're doing. So so sorry, Charlotte, please continue.
No, I'm good. I think that was my story to share. Yeah.
Does anyone else amongst the panelists have cultural anecdotes as to how a misunderstanding occurred, or you said something, someone understood something else, or the silence was misinterpreted? No? Okay.
Very good.
No, because different cultures have different ways of expressing. Some people won't say when they're angry. Some people are very verbal about their anger. So during the bootcamp experience within your team, you'll probably be experiencing a whole range of differences that you'll automatically learn to recognize. So I think it'll be a very valuable experience in that sense as well, because if you're going to be a global entrepreneur, you'll be dealing with many people from different countries and different cultures and levels of understanding. And some companies actually work specifically on that, on how to help people optimize their communications across cultures. So that's a very big factor, I think, in the success of a company.
I have one quick learning, is to step away from the email for a while and respond to a message in a non-emotional way. If you disagree, if you don't like what the message was, I step away from it, because otherwise, it can get emotional and fiery in terms of response. Step back.
How do you mean, if you receive an email that impacts you negatively, is that what you're saying?
Yes, or I disagree, or something that I vehemently disagree, I have to step back and take a couple of hours before going back and responding to that message.
Right.
Yeah.
I would also say for your time at the boot camp, take the opportunity to practice and observe culture, because it's going to be, I think, something in the range of 35 different countries, and that's not an opportunity that you get too often, because fundamentally everybody thinks about things differently, grew up differently, even coming from the same country but under different living conditions and stuff. It's fundamentally different, and it's so fascinating that there's so much to be learned.
I want to add on to what Andrew said in terms of the bootcamp. I think, because there's a cultural difference, but there's always also the individual stories that everybody has, and they have so much impact. Like for me, when it comes to the bootcamp or after any kind of teamwork that you have, it's really important for people to feel respected. Like the beginning of good teamwork comes from somebody feeling respected within a team, but people perceive respect in a different way. And if there's something that you can do as part of your team, is trying to understand for every individual, what makes them feel respected, and what is the limits, like what breaches respect for them. And when you start from there, you're actually already on a very healthy base, because even when you have conflict, you can have conflict. Conflict is healthy, it's not a bad thing. But do you have conflict with respect? Or do you have conflict and you disrespect somebody else, which can break something very deep into the connection that you have in the team? And that's both cultural, but it's also individual. It also depends on the story of every individual. And that's, for me, a really big point to work on in the beginning of building a team. Yeah.
And to build on that one, I would just say that the training in in you stepping into other people's perspectives and viewpoints, and see how they will look at you when you are maybe trying to not give an order, but tell somebody to do something in your team, and how is that addressed in the team, and how is it received, and that you just think about how you communicate and how other people actually view how you are behaving. You can use that kind of training later on in the process when you're going into sales. That's the key in sales, to have all this in place, that ability to possess different perspectives of a situation.
And if I also may add to this, it's very important to choose your battles when pushing your ideas and thoughts in the team environment. Try as much as possible not to get attached to your ideas, and also to question, to ask yourself, am I emotional about my idea? Because this happens a lot there, and all your team members are very strong individuals with strong egos, and yeah, you have to always balance to think about whether your idea is actually worth pushing through, or it's best just to not get emotionally attached and let the team decide, even if it's something that you don't agree about. At the end of the day, the team collaboration is more important than your own point, and you have to constantly balance this. So push the idea, or just let it slide and wait for the next one.
Thank you very much, Dorian. And I think we're going to wrap it up now, because we're disciplined entrepreneurs, and it's it's sign-off time, and I really don't want to abuse Charlotte's time. It's 2 a.m. where Charlotte is, so thank you, Charlotte. And thank you everybody for attending. We hope that this e-seminar was useful, and we'll be looking at all the chat questions that were not addressed, and we'll be seeing to answering those in the next few days. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Andrew, for hosting, and thank you so much to all our panelists.
All right, bye for now.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.